Hello soulmates, it is an absolute pleasure to have you once more on my channel. If this is your first time checking out my channel, please feel free to subscribe, because on this channel I teach you how to do simple DIY fashion right there at your home. Today we will be learning how to make a 720-degree peplum blouse. So to get started, there are some things you'll need. In my previous video, I showed you how to calculate 720-degree flare. So if you have not checked that out, I'm going to put a link in the description box so you will know where to find it. So this is what I did. I went ahead and this is the lining for the peplum, and I also cut out my 360-degree flare for my peplum, and I also added my interfacing on it. Now this is a very light interfacing. If you want your peplum to stand significantly, you could go ahead and fuse a harder interfacing on it, but I do not want mine to stand so much, so I fused a light interfacing on it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to show you how to achieve the top of this folded in two, and I folded to the biggest part of my body measurement, which is, in this case, is my bust, and I added about 3 to 4 inches more for seam allowances. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to draw my starting point. So that is my starting line. So the next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to take half of my armhole, mine is 8.5, which is here, 8.5, and I'm going to take my under bust measurement. Mine is 14 inches, so that's 14 inches, and then I'm going to take the length of my top, which is 16 inches, and half an inch for to join the peplum to the top, so that's 16.5 inches. Okay, so that's 16 inches plus half an inch, 16.5, and I'm going to make these into a straight line. So ignore this one, I'm sorry, and the top one. It wasn't drawn straight. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to input my 3 inches, 8 inches standard. So that's 3 inches, 8 inches, and I'm gonna go down 1 inch to create my shoulder slope. So that's my shoulder slope. So my shoulder is 15 inches, and I'm gonna add half an inch for joining along, so that's going to be half of 15 is 7.5, so that's gonna be 8. So I'm gonna put that here, and I'm also gonna put it on the chest line, which is here, and I'm going to make a straight line. Now I'm going to find half of this line here. Remember, we're working at the one in the middle. Sorry about that. And then I'm gonna go in 3/4 of an inch. And I'm gonna use my armhole curve. And I'm going to make my curve. Like this. Okay. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my nipple to nipple measurement. Mine is 4, but since I'm working on my fabric, I'm going to make that 4.5 inches. Okay. I'm going to put that on the bust. So you're going to put your bust point line also. Mine is 10.5. So when you're making your horizontal measurement, put your bust line also. So I'm gonna draw my bust line, which is 10.5 inches. How can I forget the bust line? 10.5 inches is here. But where is my bust line? So remember to put your bust line, okay? So this is my bust line. Going too fast. Okay, there you go. Sorry about all these lines. I'm gonna put it also here, 4.5 inches. And I'm going to connect this line here. Okay, take it all the way down. So on my waist, I'm going to put 1/2 inch on both sides. Make 1 inch. And remember, I told you that on the bust line, which is this line, you're going to go in 1 inch, 1/2 inch more. So this is going to be 3/4 of an inch here and 3/4 of an inch on the other side. Okay, you're going to connect those. At your bust point, you're gonna go down 1 inch. Okay, and then I'm going to use my curved ruler and connect those lines there. Okay, like this. You could see my chalk. If you can't see what's happening here, I have a detailed video on how to draft a Bustier pattern. You could check that out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my bust measurement on my chest line. Okay, so remember to ignore this one and this one. We're working with one in the middle. I'm going too fast. So my bust is 42. When I divide 42 by 4, I get 10.5, and I'm going to add 1/2 inch for seam allowance, which is 11 inches. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to find the middle of this all the way. So that's 10.5. So 1/2 of 10.5 is 5 1/4. So I'm gonna find 5 1/4, which is here, and I'm gonna go down 1/2 inch from here, which is there, and I'm going to connect to the bust point like this. Okay, so now on either side of this, I'm going to add 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here. You could add whatever you want. but I want to add 1/2 inch, and I'm gonna go up from the bust line 1 inch, and I'm going to connect those two here. Okay, so now you have that. But remember that if you're going to take out this 1 inch dart that you have here, you're going to cut it out, so you have to extend this line by 1 inch, which is here. Okay, and you're going to redraw. You're going to redraw the armhole right there. Okay, I hope you understand what I'm doing, and the chalk is not too much for you. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my horizontal measurements. So as I said, my bust is going to be 11 inches, which is here. And remember that I took out 1 inch dart here, so I have to add it back. So that is 1 plus 1 inch to sew it together. That's 2 inches. So I'm gonna put my 2 inches here. Plus I'm going to need another inch to sew it together. So it's right here. So let me do that again. My bust is going to be 11 inches, which is there. I'm going to cut out this 1 inch dart right here. So I have to add it back, which is 1 inch plus 1 inch to sew it together. That's 2 inches. So I put 2 inches here plus 1 inch for sewing allowance. So I'm going to go to my waist now. So my waist, I'm going to make it 35 inches. A quarter of 35 is 8.75. So I'm gonna put 8.75 here. Okay. Plus 1 inch here that I took out. Plus another inch to sew it together. So that's 2 inches plus 1 inch for side seam allowance. That's 3 inches. So let me do that again. My waist is 35 inches. When I divide that by 4, I get 8.75. So that's what I have here, 8.75, right? Then I added 1 inch because these two darts, this 2 1/2 dart will make 1 plus 1 inch to sew it together. That's 2 inches plus 1 inch for side seam allowance. And I'm going to connect these two here. Okay, so this is what you're going to have. So let's go to the top here, and remember to put your, all right, so before I do that, I'm going to make my neckline. So I want a neckline that's about 5 inches. So this is 3, so this is gonna be 2 more along the slope area, and I want a neck depth of about 5 inches, so 5 by 5, and I'm going to use my ruler and connect it there. So that's what I want. You can make any neckline you want, but I want it to be this way. So now you're going to add your 1/2 inch seam allowance here. Gonna connect. Okay, so our front is ready to be cut out. Ensure that you go over your measurements in order not to get incorrect measurements. So what you're going to do, you're going to put this on your lining and you're going to cut your lining just the same way. Okay, so quickly let's go to the back. So this is my back. What I'm gonna do is that I'm going to mark, remember to take out your 1 inch allowance for your zipper. Okay, and I'm gonna connect all those. So that's the first thing you do, take out your 1 inch waist zipper. Now you're going to start putting your lines. So you start with your first, your straight line, shoulder line. Then you're going to put your half of your armhole, mine is 8.5, and ensure you get it straight. I was rushing. All right. So I'm gonna make that into a straight line. And here you don't need the bust point, but you need it at the front. So now I'm going to put my waist, which is 16 inches, plus half an inch to sew it together, 16.5. Okay. So 16, 16.5. And I'm going to make that into a straight line. Those go into a straight line. Okay, so now you're going to put your 3 inch 8 inches standard as we did the front. You go down by 1 inch, or you could go down by half an inch. 2 at the back, just at the back though. So I'm going to make that into a straight line, and I'm going to put my, and you notice I'm taking all my measurements from my 1 inch point. So I'm going to take my shoulder, which is 8 inches, put the same thing on my chest line. I'm making that into a straight line like that. Now I'm going to find the midpoint. Okay, and then I'm going to draw my curve. Remember, you don't go in at the back because there's no arm to arm measurement there. So that's what you're gonna have. I'm going to put my remember we said that my bust is 11 inches, all from the 1 inch point now, and this is going to give 1 inch to sew it together. My waist is, so I'm going to have a dart, just a single dart. So I'm going to put my nipple to nipple measurement, which is 4 inches. No need to put half an inch because you're not going to cut it out. 4 inches also at the chest line. You're going to connect those here. Okay, and then you're going to put half an inch seam allowance. Come down here from 1 inch. You're going to connect. Connect it here. Okay, so my waist is 8.75 plus this 1 inch, 9.75. Okay, plus 1 inch to sew it together. So I added 2 more inches. So my waist again is 8.75. Okay, plus 2 inches, 1 inch plus 1 inch for side seam, and I'm gonna connect these. here. Bring my thing all the way down. Okay, so remember at the front we did 5 inches, so 3 plus 2 more there, which is 5, and I'm gonna go down here about 1 inch. Okay, and I'm going to connect. Okay, and remember to put your 1 inch your half an inch seam allowance to join. Okay, so this is coming down pretty nicely. Okay, so there you have it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut it out, but before I cut it out, I'm going to take half an inch away from my, it helps with bulging, so I'm gonna take away that. I made a video showing you, stating why you should do that, and I'm going to connect it to the chest line. Okay, there you go. I'm gonna connect that to the chest line. Okay, and then I'm gonna cut this out. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut it out on the lining also. Okay, soulmates, so we cut out the top of the pattern, and I went ahead and I attached interfacing on the top half of it because I think the fabric was too thin, and I also went ahead and at the bust area, to the under bust area, I attached fusible fusible fleece to the area so as to make it a bit more obvious. So I'm going to put a link in the description box where I got this. I bought it on Amazon, so I'm going to put a link for you to find it. Also, if you need a video on how to pad your bustier, I can also do that for you also. I also have my lining. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to sew the top half together, and then we sew the bottom half. So what you're going to do, you're going to take your front like this, and you're going to sew them together. So you see me pinning it, I'm going to sew them together. Okay, I'm gonna do it on both sides, and I'm also going to sew the back half also. So ensure that you have everything correct. When you finish sewing, it should look like this. Okay, there should not be any shortage in that area. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna sew it. Also, when you finish sewing, notch the underbust so that you could press it easily and it will relax. I'm also going to take the darts in at the back here, at the back darts, and also on my lining. So I'm gonna do that and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, soulmates, so after you finish sewing and ironing, you're supposed to have something that looks like this. So what I'm going to do now is, this is how it looks in the other side, is that I'm going to take my lining and I'm going to join them right sides facing each other, and I'm going to close up the neckline. Okay, But what I'm going to do before I do that, I'm going to attach them at the shoulders. So I'm going to put lining to lining and this to the other one. When I do that, I'm going to attach them at the shoulders. So I'm going to take my lining and I'm going to put them lining to lining, fabric to fabric, and then I'm going to finish the neckline. But I'm going to show you how to finish the neckline, because I'm not going to finish the neckline all the way to the end. I'm going to stop where my zipper mark is, because I'm going to put in my zipper afterwards, and then I finish up the neckline at the back. So that's what I'm going to do now. So now that I attached it at the shoulders like this, I'm going to put the lining on top of it, so like this. So lining on top of it like that, and then now I'm going to finish up the neckline. And as I stated before, I'm not gonna finish it all the way to the end. I'm going to leave the zipper allowance that I did, so I'm gonna go all the way around, and when I'm done I make my top stitch, but then I'm gonna leave this part open so that I could put my zipper in. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Okay, soulmates, so this is what you're supposed to have for your, remember we leave the zipper allowance at the back right here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put this aside and let's work on the bottom of this. So for the bottom, remember we're doing a 720-degree flare. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to slit these open at one side. Didn't do that before. So I open that, and I open the other one also. I'm also going to open this side, one side of the lining, and I'm gonna open another side of the lining. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to attach the lining with the lining at one side like this, with 1/2 inch seam allowance. That's what we left the last time. And I'm also going to do the same with the main part also. I'm gonna do that and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so I went ahead and I joined my two flares together, and I also ironed them down. If you notice, it's right here. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to take the lining like this, and I'm gonna put right sides facing each other, and I'm going to start sewing my 1/2 inch seam allowance at the bottom right here. So I'm going to start sewing my 1/2 inch allowance, and I'm gonna take it all the way around, and then I'm going to top stitch on the lining, okay, and then I'll iron it. Okay, soulmates, so I went ahead and I attached my lining to my main fabric, and I did a top stitch. So this is what you're supposed to have, and I also ironed it down. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my main bodice and I'm going to attach them at the sides. Okay, so I'm going to attach lining to lining and fabric to fabric. So let me put this aside for a little bit. So I'm going to attach lining to lining and fabric to fabric. I'm going to do that and then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so I'm taking this baby home. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to attach my pieces together. So on my main fabric, I'm going to put my main lining, my main peplum like this. So I'm gonna attach it all the way around, okay? And I'm gonna do the same thing with the lining. So you have to do right sides facing each other. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to put my main fabric together and I'm gonna attach it right there, and then I'm gonna do the same thing for the lining. Okay, soulmates, so I've attached them together. So you see, this is what it looks like. Okay, this is what it looks like on the outside. Okay, if you notice, everything matched up, and this is what it's gonna look like on the inside. So you see how neat this is. This is what it looks like on the inside. So the only thing I have left to do is that I'm going to give it a nice press, of course, and I'm going to fix in my zipper. So this is the open-ended zipper that I'm going to put in it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to zip it open, okay, and I'm going to open it like this, right? And I'm going to press down my 1 inch seam allowance, okay? I'm gonna take my 1 inch seam allowance, iron it, and then I'm going to take my zipper and I'm gonna put it on my 1 inch seam allowance, starting at the very tip, okay, like this, and I'm gonna sew it all the way down, then when I'm done, it's gonna look something like this when I turn it over. So when I do that, then I'm going to finish it up with the lining like this, okay? If you want me to show you how to insert an open-ended zipper, just leave a comment in the comment section and I'll be happy to show you how I do that. So this is where I'm going to end this tutorial today. I hope you find it helpful. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Do not forget to subscribe and turn on the post notification bell so you'll be notified each time I make a video. Until we meet again, I will see you in my next video. Do take care of yourself, and bye.